Today, we're going to explore how to bring our board game ideas out of our head and into reality
without them being lost in the shuffle.
You've done something that myself and lots of other board gamers have just daydreamed of, is you've taken an idea for a board game and you've taken it out of your idea zone and you've actually gone through the process of self-publishing it and making it a thing that exists on our table to play. I would love to explore that process. How did you go from idea, pick the idea you wanted to implement, go through the development process? What obstacles did you encounter? What did you learn along the way? And how are you going to apply all of that knowledge to your next game idea that you're going to publish? Just that.
Just the basics.
Just the basics.
Fantastic. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, myself included. There's so many board gamers that would love to share their ideas, but just don't know where to start. So,
right.
Eirik, start us.
So for Rocket Roll in particular, it started with a game mechanism.
Okay.
I really like the rolling dice placement majority control part of Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a really neat mechanism that I can't think of another game that it's been used in. So I really liked that, and that was kind of stewing around in my head. And then another thing I really find for game designers is to have a goal or some sort of deadline outside of yourself. In this case for me, it was the local convention coming up at Funicon.
Okay.
I said, that's happening in October. I want to have a game out for then.
Okay. So in May, how fully formed was your idea at that point?
Barely at all.
Okay. So
barely at all.
So it wasn't like you had this idea that you had been kicking around for years and it's like, I'm finally going to get it printed. It was like, in May, you were like, I'm going to come up with something. There's my deadline.
Correct. Well, now also another thing as a game designer that I do, and I think a lot of people do, is that I have a notebook which has hundreds of ideas of games. Maybe 20 of those have gotten into the prototype phase, and maybe 6 of those have gone on to, further development.
What was it about Rocket Roll that made you decide, out of all of your ideas, this is the one that I'm going to try and make happen by October?
So that was another interesting impetus because the Game Crafter was hosting a stock component contest. And in this, they wanted you to come up with a game using their stock components, not the custom stuff, but stock components.
Okay.
But come up with a game where they look like they are custom components for the game.
Oh, neat.
So I went through all 3,000 stock components on the website of the Game Crafter and made a list of all the ones I thought were interesting. And I came across these rocket dice, which I have not seen anywhere else either. I've seen a lot of dice, a lot of crazy dice. There's a lot of dice goblins out there, right? Yes. But what I liked about those dice was that they gave, for a D6, it gave an extra piece of information, which was the direction.
Ah, okay.
Because they're rocket shaped. Now, I ended up not using that aspect in the game, right?
Okay.
But Game Design Lab podcast talks a lot about there are 2 types of design methods. One he considers to be a painter, and the other is a sculptor.
Okay.
So in this, the concept is that a sculptor puts everything in and then takes away.
Okay.
A painter slowly adds the things they want.
Builds layers.
Builds layers, right? So I think for a lot of designing creative process, people tend to be this way. You either throw everything in the bucket and start taking stuff out, or you slowly add what you want.
That is fascinating because that's how I feel about video editing. It's a sculpting process.
Yes.
It's like I get the footage and I know the stuff's in there, but you whittle away and you sculpt and massage what's in there to get the final video. So that can apply to lots of different creative endeavors.
Absolutely. I've done that with my writing. I like to write short stories as well, and I have to put myself in 2 different phases. So I do this now with game design, where there's the creative part, and I don't put any parameters on myself. Just add whatever. Get it out there, get it out.
Right.
And then when I come back to it, I shift into my editor mode.
Right.
And that's where you start paring things down and creating it and refining it and getting it closer to what you want for the experience. That was a great exercise, just being to learn everything that was available on the Game Crafter. So yeah, I had several impetus. One was kind of this mechanism I really liked. One was this cool component I had found. And then I just wanted to kind of blend them together.
It's surprising to me and quite interesting that you gave yourself a deadline that early in the development process.
During the summer when I'd done this, they have very busy because there's a lot of conventions, there's a lot of people going and trying to get their prototypes, so they do a lot of prototype printing. And so when I went initially looked and they said 2 months for delivery. So there's 2 of my 5 months gone. Right? That if I had waited until I was done with the game and then plugged in, I might have only had a month left of time. And then I would have missed my deadline. So the more buffer you can give yourself on lead time of getting your actual product, the better. In my particular case, this arrived the day before the convention.
I seem to recall watching you unpacking the boxes to put them on the table at the convention.
Yes, made for a great little origin story on my first game.
Yes.
So that's when the rubber meets the road in game design, I mean, the best thing you can do is start making a prototype. And a lot of people stop themselves from doing so, I think, because they want to have it all figured out. But the reality is you can't figure it all out until you have started testing it. The best game in the world, the most perfect game in the world, is the one that's still in your head, because it's never been tested by anybody else. It is perfect, it is flawless. No one will ever want to play any other game because it's so amazing. And then you put it to pen and paper and put it on the table, and you quickly realize where it falls short or these types of things. That's where prototyping and iteration and playtesting really comes in. It is so essential. This isn't finished, this isn't polished, I'm trying to figure it out. Please help me break this game. Putting your baby out there and then asking people to play it and enjoy it, and if they don't, or if there's something wrong with it or broken with it, that can feel like a reflection on you.
Of course.
And then to further that, I started a local meetup group for game designers. And this was to, not only have other people who are into it to share ideas and encouragement and inspiration, and also give deadlines for something to be done on your game, but it was also a way to get another set of playtesters, people who were looking at it with kind of a different set of eyes, and who fully understood, this is a prototype, you're here to work on this.
So how many iterations of that prototyping process did you go through, and what kind of obstacles did you run into that you had to overcome during it?
So I probably went through, I would say 7 or 8 good iterations. Sometimes that's components, sometimes that's rules, right? And sometimes those are just little minor tweaks. In Rocket Roll in particular, I had, there was a series of the wrap-up phase, and after a couple of playtesters, they're like, if you moved this one right above this one, it would provide players a lot more choice and agency in this next phase.
Okay.
And that was wonderful feedback. I didn't have to change anything about the game other than this happens before this. Instead of, and it was that subtle thing that
you're so close to it.
Correct.
You can't see it. It's in there. So these other pair of eyes seeing that, it, to them, was more obvious and stood out.
Yes, exactly.
And that is very important.
Yeah, that is the curse of closeness to what you're doing, right? Especially with game design, which is often done by yourself in a vacuum. There's a lot of art to being a playtester and also to running a playtest. I've certainly learned that from going to multiple proto spiels. I've had great experiences where people are just like, they parcel out the information really well and lead you through it and guide you. And then I've had people be like, here's everything, play.
How many things did you encounter that you loved, but you're like, oh my gosh, you're right, that's got to go? And then how many ideas and suggestions did you receive that you were like, hey, thanks, I am not going to do that because that's not in the spirit of what I want this game to be?
It was a constant 2 steps forward, kind of 1 step back process, but you're always making progress.
But being cognizant of that you're going to encounter that, I would imagine it could prevent a lot of people from getting frustrated. And so knowing to expect that can probably help prevent some levels of frustration.
Absolutely. And I have a little saying that, an obstacle is not an obstacle unless it's in the path of the direction you're trying to go.
I felt the capillaries expand in my brain. They just opened up this whole...
That's what I put in your water. The closer I get to what I think the game is being done, the more my ego is kind of fragilely on the line. And so it's like, if I think it's done and I go and take a playtest, and even if all I get is like really good input, like here, if you change this little tweak and do this, and 3 good things, all good things, there's still that part of me that goes home and goes, I thought I had it.
I thought it was
finished,
Yeah.
And what I've learned over my years of doing this is that little emotional state gets shorter and shorter.
Oh, that's great.
That is my skin getting thicker. That is like, nope, this is just part of the process. That's what you need to grow. To grow your game is you need that pressure. You need those little, divots that hit the shell and be like, look, there's a fragile part here. You need to fix this. Because the reality is once you get a game out into the world, you're going to have 1,000 times more playtesters than you ever had doing your prototypes. And those folks,
they're going to find every little nuance and wrinkle and hiccup that could possibly be encountered in the game.
Absolutely. I have gamers in my group that's what they'd like to do is break games.
That can be very helpful at the right time.
At the right time,
At
yes.
the right time. So you got your idea, you got it fully formed, you got it play tested, you got it ready to go, you're ready to go to press. So what was that process? And what did you have to do to make that happen?
I'd done a lot of prototyping and done some stuff before with parts, but getting the box. So I'd used, licensed commercial art through Canva.
Okay.
And then did all the design myself, integrated it. And then, luckily the Game Crafter has all these wonderful templates, so it's really easy to upload your art to it.
So the printer that you used for the game had a lot of the templates and supplies ready for you to use.
Yeah, it's very user-friendly. It's a great system they built themselves. I cannot recommend it enough.
Not a sponsor.
That was, getting all the artwork. I'd done stuff with that with components before, but really the intimidating part was doing the box, because this is 2 pieces, which are technically have 5 sides. It took a lot of tweaking on my part. I'm not a graphic artist by any means, or graphic designer.
So you really did do this as a one-man operation, even the art files and everything.
The other partner in crime in this is my wife, Amy, who is my editor and IRIC to English translator. Put everything in, download it, upload it to Game Crafter, and they'll just show you a physical representation of it. Yeah, it was all web-based. I didn't have to have any specialty training per se, or download some big Adobe
suite of software
or anything like that. Yeah. And for my first game, this was about getting 100 copies out. It wasn't about making my fortune and retiring. I want to see, can I get 100 games out that people enjoy, and that is my starting point for then doing the next one.
Well, that leads me into my last question is, what are the things that you learned during the development process of this game that you're going to apply to the next one that you actually have go to press?
So many things. I mean, given the size of the box and all this, I was limited on the size of the rule book I could have.
That's a good point.
And I did put in examples as much as I could, but realizing afterwards, that visual, if you can just show, So the next game I worked on, which is in a contest right now with the Game Crafter, I did a lot more of that.
Okay.
It is much more visually oriented, but also just the general overall process. And these are all just learning curve things I wanted to learn. That's why I wanted to do a self-published. I don't actually want to become a publisher. I don't want to do self-publishing, Chaz, to be perfectly honest. But I wanted that experience so I can speak from it and say why I don't want to do it or why I do want to do it, the parts I liked about it. And when I do talk with a publisher, then I at least have that experience. And I can empathize and understand and have that context of what it means to bring an idea to a product to market.
Nice.
And all the things that go with it.
Actually, I feel better about going back to my designs and revisiting them now. I feel like I'll be a little less frustrated with some things. So if nothing else, you helped me. So thank you very much for sharing all of that stuff, all of your experience with the game design. And I am looking forward to how you apply that to the next thing you have in the works.
Well, thank you so much, Chaz. Yeah, I really like to, if I can inspire other people to do game design, that is one of my passions. I really like game design, but helping others is equally important to me.
That's very magnanimous. You know who else likes game design? The game that helped make this episode possible, or game-related service, item, idea, thought. This thing you're about to see, they helped make this episode possible. And they're neat. So, yay. Watch it, please.
My game pick of the day is one I picked because it was a key game in my development. The game is Hadrian's Wall, a Renegade production with Garfield Games. This is absolutely one of my favorite games. Again, partially because I really enjoy solo games. I've actually never played this game with multiple people.
Oh, neat!
Because it is kind of like multi-person solitaire in that regard.
Okay.
There's very little dynamic or interaction or even impact of the other players. I don't consider that a negative at all. I think it's just a wonderful game. They call this a Euro right.
Okay.
Which is its own new genre of games. It comes with 2 big pads of paper. These are your boards. But you have meeples, and there's an exchange, and this game is almost pure chaining, getting little synergies to happen. Like, okay, if I do this, I put this meeple here, I get to cross this off, and that gives me these, and I could do this, and that just scratches the itch perfectly for me. It's something I just love. My wife come home, and I'm just sitting there staring at these 2 sheets of paper with some colored meeples, and coloring in circles, and she's like, is this fun? I'm like, absolutely. And then one thing I really appreciate is that Renegade and Garfield came out with a 16 chapter campaign for solo. It's just a PDF you can print offline, and it forces you to approach the game in different ways.
Oh, neat.
So that's like, okay, well now try talking to the artisans. Well now try talking to the Patreons.
Gives you different objectives for every session.
Correct.
Oh,
like,
neat.
can you solve the game with this little parameter? I just loved it. So yeah, it's one of my favorite games, absolutely, and that's why it's my pick of the game.
All right, well yeah, there you go. Recommended from Protospiel to IRIC, and now from IRIC to you. And thank you for sharing it. And thank you for joining us. And we hope to talk to you again real soon.